everyone, welcome to another video. So in this video, we'll try and understand the important GST returns and their due dates or deadlines in 2026. Well, it is a well-known fact that once you have a GST registration, that means once you have a GST identification number or GST number, then you are obligated to file a GST return either on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis. So let us understand the different types of GST returns in this particular video and their relevant due dates or deadlines in 2026. The type of returns depends upon the calculation of your aggregate turnover. If for a taxpayer, once he's registered, the next step is of course to find out when he should file a return. So if that taxpayer's aggregate turnover is exceeding 5 crore rupees in terms of turnover, in terms of the value, then that taxpayer is obligated to file return every month. That means 12 times in a particular year. And if the aggregate turnover of that particular person is not exceeding the 5 crore rupee mark, then you have an option to go for the QRMP scheme, which is called the quarterly return monthly payment scheme. Under this particular scheme, the taxpayer has an option to pay GST every month depending upon the GST sales he has on a monthly basis. But as far as filing or compliance is concerned, only every 3 months, only 4 times in a particular year. That is, every quarter he only need to file a GST return. That is under the QRMP scheme. So let us understand the different types of GST returns and their due dates. The first one is GSTR-1, which is a common return where you show your GST sales or your outward supplies. If you're a monthly filer of monthly filing, if you're under the monthly filing category, then your due date is 11th of the particular month. And if you are in the QRMP scheme or the quarterly category, then your due date to file GSTR-1 is 13th of the month succeeding the particular quarter. So for Jan, Feb and March, the due date is 13th of April 2026, within which you have to file a GSTR-1 if you're under the QRMP scheme. For GSTR-3B, which is basically return where you show your sales, purchases and calculate your net GST for payment. For monthly filers, it is 20th of the month, and for quarterly or under the QRMP scheme, it is 22nd of the month succeeding the relevant quarter. So again, for Jan, Feb, March, it will be 22nd of April, the due date to file GSTR-3B for QRMP scheme taxpayers. The next two returns, called CMP-08 and GSTR-4, are basically relevant for those under the composition scheme or composition taxpayers. These are taxpayers or small taxpayers whose turnover is not exceeding 1.5 crore if you are dealing with goods or 50 lakhs if you're dealing with services. So if you're within these threshold limits, then you can opt for the composition scheme and pay GST only at a smaller percentage of the taxable value. And your compliance also less because you just need to take care of CMP-08 and GSTR-4. As far as CMP-08 is concerned, it is to be filed every quarter. That is basically by the 18th of the month succeeding the relevant quarter, you have to file your CMP-08 and pay off the GST under the composition scheme. GSTR-4 is called the annual return as far as composition scheme is concerned. It is basically for those under the composition scheme, and this is to be filed by 30th of the June of the relevant financial year. So if you're talking about financial year 25-26, then you've got to file a GSTR-4, which is annual return for composition taxpayers by 30th of June 2026. Moving on, you have a fairly new return called GSTR-6, and this is meant for those under the input service distributor, those who are tagged as ISD taxpayers. These are ISD is basically functioning like a head office where you have, let's say, a head office in multiple branches, and whatever common credits come to the head office will need to be distributed to the branches in the proportion of the turnover. And for the head office to do this, the head office will mandatorily have to get a GST registration, and this became effective from the mandatory criteria became effective from 2025. And this registration is called the ISD registration. And once you get the registration, you have to file GSTR-6 by 13th of every month if you want to pass on the credits to your respective branches. GSTR-7 and 8 is not for regular taxpayers, because GSTR-7 is for those who deduct TDS under GST. For them, they'll have to file a GSTR-7 by 10th of every month. Say if I am a supplier and I'm supplying to the government, let's say the government of India, and before the government of India makes a payment to me, they will deduct not TDS under income tax, but TDS under GST. And they are bound to file a GSTR-7 by 10th of every month. Similarly, if I'm supplying goods through Indian e-commerce operators, then they will collect TCS from me and pay to the government. So those TCS collectors will also have to file a GSTR-8 by 10th of every month. And then you have something called a GSTR-9, which is your annual return. And this annual return is basically meant for those whose aggregate turnover is exceeding 2 crore rupees. They'll have to file an annual return. And the due date is 31st of December. So if you talk about 25-26, then the due date to file a GSTR-9 annual return is 31st of December 2026. Then comes GSTR-9C. Along with this annual return, you have something called a 9C, a reconciliation statement to basically reconcile the figures appearing in the audited books as well as GSTR-9. And this is meant for those whose aggregate turnover is above 5 crore rupees. So for those whose aggregate turnover is above 2 crores, you have a GSTR-9. And for those whose aggregate turnover is above 5 crores, you have a GSTR-9C, which again is to be filed by 31st December of the subsequent year. And then you have a GSTR-10, which is the last of the relevant returns. It's called the final return. And as the name suggests, this return is to be filed by those whose GST registration got cancelled or their GST registration has been cancelled by the GST officer. A final return will have to be filed within 3 months of the date of cancellation or the cancellation order. So basically, if your GST registration is cancelled, then one, you have to file returns up to the date of cancellation, and you have to file a final return in GSTR-10 disclosing the sales, whatever you had till the date of cancellation, whatever GST you had to pay till cancellation, whatever. And this is to be filed within 3 months from the date of cancellation. So these were some of the important relevant GST returns and their due dates or deadlines in 2026, which are to be followed. Coming to some more pointers to be kept in mind. Of course, from 2025 June onwards, you now have the criteria of 3-year time limit. Basically, for GST returns exceeding 3 years in due date, you can no longer file these returns. So if you have not filed returns for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and if anything exceeds 3 years, it is totally blocked. You cannot file GSTR-1 or 3B. Blocking of GSTR-3B effective from Jan 2026, there are some validation checks like RCM, like reversed reclaimed credits and all that, which until you clear those validations, your 3B will be blocked and you will not be able to file. The important reconciliation is 3B versus 2B, wherein whatever ITC appearing in 2B, you cannot avail more than what it is, or you cannot utilize more than what is appearing in GSTR-2B of a particular month. And therefore, this reconciliation becomes all the more important when you file your GSTR-3B returns. And then, of course, you have late fees, which was automated right from the beginning, but interest recently has got automated. And what they say is that you can do an upward revision of interest by doing an edit of the interest column, but downward revision of the interest cannot be done. So even if you miss the deadline of filing the return, let's say GSTR-3B by 1 day, late fee will get auto computed, but you'll also have to pay interest, which will be auto computed. And if you check the calculation, you can do an upward revision of interest, but not a downward revision. So these were the important returns, their due dates, their deadlines to be kept in mind for 2026, along with some pointers. Well, I hope I was able to make things clear in this particular video. If you like the video, you could show support to us by hitting the like button. If you want more videos like these on a regular basis through way of notifications, you could also think of hitting on the subscribe button. Till then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care and thank you.